And of course, on to the most important part, who is on board the Soyuz spacecraft? There are 3 crew members inside who have been traveling to the station over the last several hours. They are led by Russian cosmonaut Oleg Skripochka. He's there in the center. This is his 3rd flight to space, having previously served on expeditions 2526 and 4748. Seated to his left, NASA astronaut Jessica Meir. This is her 1st flight, and she's going to be the 65th female and the 238th person to move on board the space station. Meir joining her fellow ASCAN classmates Drew Morgan, Christina Cook, and Nick Hague already on board the station. On the left there is Hazzaa Ali Almansoori, an astronaut from the United Arab Emirates. He's the first such flyer from that country and will be a spaceflight participant. He's going to be spending about 8 days on board the International Space Station, eventually coming home in a Soyuz with current station residents Alexei Ovchinin and Nick Hague when they return on October 3rd. And there are 6 people on board the space station right at this moment. They are the crew of Expedition 60, an international contingent led right now by cosmonaut Alexei Ovchinin. He's in the very center of this group photo here, a veteran cosmonaut on his 3rd flight. Just to the very top left is Italian astronaut Luca Parmitano, a 2nd-time flyer and the eventual Expedition 61 commander following that departure coming up on October 3rd. Also in the back row on the right is Christina Cook. She's going to be remaining on board. This is her 1st flight, but it'll be a long one, lasting in excess of 300 days, as she's not set to come home until spring of next year. In the front row, starting on the left, NASA astronaut Drew Morgan, a 1st-time flyer. And then just in the middle there is Nick Hague, also a 1st-timer, and he's going to be wrapping up, well, 2nd time, counting his previous Soyuz abort that he made with Alexei Ovchinin, but first long-duration stay on board the space station. He and Ovchinin set to come back on October 3rd. And then rounding out the crew on the far right there is Alexander Skvortsov, commanding the Soyuz craft with Parmitano and Morgan. And this was also his 3rd flight aboard the International Space Station. So once this crew docks, we will have 9 people on board the space station. This is going to be the largest crew we've had on board since September of 2015, when we had 9 crew members on board during a similar crew transition that took place in the midst of Scott Kelly and Mikhail Kornienko's year-long mission. So it's going to be a very time to see this many people in space, as well as not only having a couple of 1st-time flyers, but also a 1st-time flyer from a country, the United Arab Emirates, on today's Soyuz mission.
We know that you're a great host, and we're counting on you. And thank you. I copy all, and I will not distract you anymore. Thank you, and we are looking forward to meeting you guys. We're also looking forward to seeing you.
So the crew's already getting a chance to talk to each other. This day did begin several hours ago as the Soyuz rocket took off from the Baikonur Cosmodrome at 8:57 a.m. Central Time. It was 6:57 p.m. in the evening over there in Baikonur, lifting off from site number 1, the launch pad in Baikonur that famously sent Yuri Gagarin on his mission as the first human into space. This will be the last such launch from that pad for the foreseeable future, while they take time to modify the pad for future flights of the upgraded Soyuz 2.1A booster. It was a picture-perfect launch into the night sky there in Baikonur. No issues tracked with the rocket on the flight uphill. Both 1st, 2nd, and 3rd stages performing as expected to deliver these 3 crew members into their initial orbit. The whole trip taking about 8 minutes and 45 seconds from start to stop, and setting up the chase down that has unfolded over the last several hours, getting us to where we are right now. As mentioned, not having any issues so far with today's ascent and eventual catch-up to the International Space Station. After making that initial orbit, just about 20 minutes later, they did execute the first of 4 delta velocity burns using the engines on the Soyuz spacecraft itself, and that 3 subsequent burns eventually raised its orbit from that initial point all the way up to where the International Space Station sits. Currently orbiting at about 262 statute miles over the Earth's surface. For right now, though, we are about 36 minutes and counting away from the planned docking time. There's still a couple more impulse burns still on the menu for the Soyuz to get through before it sets up to some of the end game parts before it actually docks. So we'll hear call-outs for a number of impulse burns, and then eventually in about 10 to 15 minutes from now, we should get to a point where they do a fly-around. So this Soyuz spacecraft is going to eventually dock to the aft part of the station, the very back part of the station, docking to the Zvezda service module, and that's part of the Russian segment. If you look at this makeup, this is what the station's going to look like once the vehicle is docked. It's the Soyuz MS-15. You can see it in the bottom right corner. It's not there yet, but that's where it's headed over the next 40 minutes or so. It's going to be docking to that aft port of the Zvezda service module. It'll eventually before it gets there, it'll do what's known as a fly-around. We'll hear the call-out for fly-around start. That's expected to come in about 14 minutes from now at 2:24 p.m. Central. The crew does always have the option of getting a little bit ahead of time if they start checking through all of these milestones quickly, but that's the current timeline for that fly-around to start. Once they execute that fly-around, that'll line them up roughly with that docking port, and then they'll enter into a period called station keeping, where they will just fine-tune that alignment before beginning their final approach. The timeline we're working off today has final approach slated to start at about 2:35 p.m. Central Time, but again, we'll just keep tabs on the voice communications as they continue to check off these different milestones, eventually leading up to docking. For now, though, we are standing by for impulse number 4. That'll be the 4th of 6 that we're expecting to see today. Following that, we'll see the fly-around station keeping final approach, and then ultimately that docking. And it is nighttime for the station and the Soyuz right now. They are on the dark side of the Earth, as they're making a pass over Australia right now, 263 statute miles in height. Once they finish swinging out underneath, they're on a southeasterly track right now. They're going to pass just to the south of New Zealand, and as they do that, they'll enter into an orbital daytime, and then we should start getting some light cast, hopefully getting some views not only from the station, but the Soyuz spacecraft itself.
Copy. Excellent.
Right now, Soyuz reported about 3.2 kilometers away from the station, continuing to close in at a rate of about 8.7 meters per second. That final approach speed is going to drop down all the way to about 1/10 of a meter per second, so a bit of a glacial pace during the final charge in towards the station, but slow and steady, definitely winning the race when you're bringing two spacecraft together in orbit, traveling at 17,500 miles an hour. And this is actually a camera shot coming from the Soyuz spacecraft itself. You can see the limb of the Earth starting to light up as, again, they are approaching that sunrise.
Moscow, Sarmat. Current range is 2.7 and closing rate is 8.4. Copy.
And that other voice you're hearing is a translation of the conversations between the Soyuz commander on board, Oleg Skripochka, and the flight controllers down in Mission Control Moscow. They are under 2.7 kilometers away from the station at this point.
Tormoj flag is still illuminated, and acquisition and rotation are confirmed as well. Copy.
Есть включение СКД 221405.
221405. This is SKD activation. Copy. 0.42. Copy.
And one correction, this is actually a docking view from the docking port on the Zvezda service module. This is the aft port, so the very back part of the station where that Soyuz spacecraft is actually going to be docking. You can see it looking towards the sunrise.
Monitoring DPO.
Наблюдаем обратный разворот.
Monitoring the maneuver. Copy.
Станцию наблюдаю.
I can see the ISS. Copy.
The crew reporting they can see the station. Again, this docking maneuver is going to be automated. There's a system on board the Soyuz spacecraft known as the CORS that uses antennas and radar to automatically track in and dock to the space station. Should that have any issues, though, the commander on board, Oleg Skripochka, is equipped to take over and fly manually should it be required. But for now, everything continuing to be done automatically. This now a view from the Soyuz spacecraft, a centerline camera that is going to get the station into view there. Two numbers to keep an eye on in the bottom left corner. You see that 1.724 number ticking down. That is the range away. That's in kilometers. The number just beneath it is the range rate, so the rate of closure between the station and the Soyuz spacecraft, showing that they're getting closer to station at a rate of about 4.2 meters per second right now.
Sarmat, this is Moscow. If time allows, you can proceed with AGC mode operations. Copy.
Еще.
More. Moscow,
and there, the station now well lit, just about 1.5 kilometers away, continuing to close in.
5 kilometers, and closing rate is 4.1. The station is still at the center of the periscope and at the center of video monitor screen. Copy.
And we did get a good confirmation from the visiting vehicle officer here in Houston that Impulse 4 burn was conducted successfully. Again, that was 4 of 6 that we're expecting.
25. We will stop receiving the video. So I'll ask you to provide detailed running commentary of your actions. Copy. And one more recommendation for you guys. If we lose comm with you, then as soon as you're at station keeping, please proceed with final approach command right away. Right away? Yes. As soon as you're station keeping, please send the command. Okay, copy. So fly around, station keeping, and final approach command can be issued at that time. Copy. Current range is 1.15. Closing rate is 3.8. Copy. Sarmat, do you see the ISS?
Станцию хорошо наблюдаю.
Yes, and the picture is very clear. I can see the service module. Copy.
And just there, getting a spectacular view from one of the onboard high-definition cameras on board the station of the Soyuz. Just to the left center of your screen. The
Monitoring
very
the
southern Pacific Ocean
firing,
passing by in the
22,
background.
1902. This is the time. Copy. And we're monitoring the parameters as well.
Продолжается работа депо, горит тормоз.
Depot is firing, and the break-in flag is still illuminated on display 4. Copy.
The Soyuz continuing to close in. Skripochka, Almansoori, and Jessica Meir on board. Just about 830 meters away from the station. Again, our expected docking time today was 2:45 p.m.
Depot
Central.
firing flag is
Погас тормоз
off,
в формате 44.
and break-in flag is also off on display 4-4. Copy.
And just now getting another report. Impulse number 5 burn complete.
Current
Looking good.
range is 750.
The approach is continuing as expected.
And closing rate is 2.3. Copy.
Есть торможь 22, 21,
At 21, 22, 17, break-in parameter flag is confirmed, and depot firing confirmed. Copy.
Погас торможь. Время 22, 20.
Break-in flag is off at 22, 41, 48. Copy.
And as the Soyuz comes up on 560 meters away, impulse burn number 6 complete,
First range is
continuing on its approach.
550 meters, and closing rate is 1.5 meters. Copy. Thank you.
And the Soyuz continuing to approach inside 500 meters away now. So with all 6 impulse burns done, we're now going to be standing by for them to start what's known as the fly around. That's expected to come in about a minute or so. And that will be firing the small attitude thrusters and other thrusters on the Soyuz spacecraft to begin to swing it up and align it perfectly with its eventual docking port. This
Yes,
Soyuz is going to be docking
I'm
to the aft
monitoring
end of the station to the Zvezda service module. And so that'll be our next. We'll see some motion as it swings up away from the Earth and eventually lines itself up
And the picture
with
here
its
is great
docking
as
port.
well.
Stand by for that in about a minute or so.
Это хорошо.
That's wonderful.
Дальность 420.
420. This is the current range, and closing rate is 1.2. We're standing by for final approach corridor. Copy.
Есть работа депо.
Depot firing confirmed. Fly around confirmed at 22, 24, 20. And I'm monitoring the roll maneuver. Copy. Fly around confirmed, and we are monitoring roll maneuver.
And you just heard the translation confirming the fly around has begun.
Range, and the closing rate is 1 meter. I'm on page 63. Copy.
And we're going to unfortunately have some choppy video as we'll have some interruptions in the signal over the next few minutes or so, but everything continuing to proceed smoothly with the approach. We're now in that fly around mode.
Now, so please provide very detailed commentary of your actions. Copy.
Дальность полета 300 метров, скорость.
300 meters. This is the current range. Closing rate is 0.7. Copy.
Again, everything proceeding with today's docking right on the timeline so far, which means we might dock right around the targeted time of 2:45 p.m. Central. We are looking at a control room right now as we're waiting to get KU, or our high data rate bandwidth signal back with the station. We'll get that video shortly. It will go in and out over the next few minutes, but we're continuing to get audio updates from Oleg Skripochka on board as he relays down to the teams. They're currently in that fly around. Pretty soon they'll enter what's known as station keeping, just to do some last second fine tuning of their approach angle to the actual docking port, and then it'll be time for final approach.
Есть работа депо.
Depot firing confirmed. Current range is 240. Closing rate is 0.4.
Продолжаем.
Fly around is in progress. Copy all.
Enjoying a great view of the Soyuz as it continues to close in.
Fly around is near SM aft.
You can see a docked Progress and Soyuz spacecraft in the foreground of our view.